Greetings, 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 good people, and welcome to night 4 of our journey from ancestral wounds to soul assignment. This series is about unpacking the karmic debts, the karmic archetypes that we all come here with, but once we can understand what those karmic archetypes were or are, we can better understand what we need to do in this life and what we are meant and chose to come here to do. And this series in particular is for Black women as well as white or non-black women if we're going to use the social constructs, because we're digging into and diving into the karmic archetypes and how it differs and what is the balancing point between black women descended from enslaved Africans and white women descended from enslavers or colonizers. And I think this is an important distinction, an important thing um, to assess, to look at, to unpack, because the transatlantic slave trade is actually just being brought up to the UN, or will be brought up to the UN, that it was the biggest and most significant crime against humanity. But without even that declaration at the UN, we already know energetically and spiritually that that transatlantic slave trade, global oppression, has been the biggest karmic wound that humanity has done to each other, to itself. And we talked a little bit about that yesterday. So that is what the series, how we look at these karmic archetypes that we cannot escape. We come here with assignments, we come here with lessons to learn so that we can master the things and be able to help humanity grow to the next level. But by looking specifically at this rift, this issue, this betrayal between the construct of the races and what has happened in terms of Africans being enslaved and transported and trafficked all over the planet to build global economic systems for other people while being kidnapped, tortured, harmed, maimed, and all of the horrific things for 500 years. So we have to look at that. There is no way to get around understanding and unpacking the reality of that part of human history, which is a significant part, despite how current leaders, current US administration is trying to erase that truth. So that's what this series is about. Not too big a deal, not too heavy, but we look at this as a necessary part of our own healing. So I embrace it and I hope that you will as well. So who am I? I am Barbara Ohuninifa. I am an author, a coach, a speaker, and an ancestral strategist, and a person who has walked the path of all of the archetypes that we have been talking about over the last 3 days, as well as tonight. Yesterday was my main archetype. So if you want to go back and look at that video about betrayal trauma, feel free, please do so, because they all add up and they all work together. But that's what I do. And my channel, Beautiful, Powerful Love, my books, the coaching that I do, most, if not all of my offerings are to support and targeted for and created by and for Black women, because it is important that we remember who we are and remember who the F we are. That's the name of one of the books. Um, but more importantly, and as a part of that, actually, not more importantly, but as a part of that, my mission is around helping Black women to recognize that we are beautiful, remember that we are powerful and that we are power, so much power that we are feared and demonized all over the planet, especially in this country, as we see every time we look at the news or social media. Um, and to be love, to be the love that we seek, to be the love that we give others, to pour that love into ourselves until the cup is so full that it runneth over and others can partake of that overflow. But right now we are depleted and we have been trained and programmed to give to others, to find love, to find validation, but it's an inside job. And that's the work that I do. That's the mission and the walk that I've had to walk and continue to walk. And that's part of my soul assignment in helping other Black women to do the same. Now, this conversation has expanded in this particular case to include white women because that's the direction that I got from my spirit guides, from my ancestors, because I do also have some wild, wise, indigenous quote unquote white women because of those ancestral lineages that were also slave owners, that were also the colonizers, that had children with some of my ancestral mothers who were the Black women, the ancestors who were enslaved, brought from Africa and enslaved. I can point to at least two or three of the slave owners and colonizers who had multiple children with my ancestral mothers. And so that bloodline is a part of my DNA, whether I like it or not. But when I look and I do my ancestral work, because that is something that I encourage everyone to do, it is so necessary. We all came here through ancestors. Wouldn't have been able, we can't get here without people coming before us to create us. And when I look at and I do my ancestral work and I continue to go back, I start with who is closest to me, my mother, obviously, and then continue going back, and you strengthen those relationships. Eventually, those quote unquote white, and I say that because the race white black thing is a construct, and these women, when they lived on this planet and when they lived on this earth, never called themselves white. That wasn't even a thing. But they were of European descent. They were in the because they didn't even look at it as Europe. They were tribes within that land. And those women who were oppressed, burned at the stake, all the things that we understand were happening to women, that happened to them. And so I get messages from all of my ancestral mothers, the black, the white. There's a couple of Asian in there that are reminding me that the feminine energy on this planet has been oppressed and suppressed for too long. And now it is time for it to rise, for there to be balance again, for there to be compassion again, for there to be love again. Patriarchy, not the same as masculinity, has run amok, and it's time to pull it back in. But it's going to start with women, black, white, and every spectrum in between. If we're going to go with the construct, has to remember who they are and stand in that power that is not defined by the patriarchal systems that we've all been raised in, but is defined by their own soul. But you got to clear away a lot of muck to do that. And that's part of what we're doing in this series. And that's part of what, and I'll tell you a little bit more about a course that I'm offering. Um, and we're doing, I've opened the calendar for the fall cohort of that course. And that's what that's all about, remembering and knowing who you are so that you know why you're here and you can lean into that. Because when we do that, life is so much better. Life flows. It's not easy, but it's way easier than when you're going against your purpose, when you're going against your assignment, when you're going against yourself. It gets a lot, things flow a lot better and it's more enjoyable and more joy. So that was a very long way to say if what I talk about is what you're into, please subscribe. Go ahead and click that button now. Like, comment. Let's get the algorithm to be aware that this is something that is important, that Black women and white women can heal themselves individually, but eventually understand that this is about humanity and it is women that are essentially going to have to save humanity above and beyond whatever the shit we see in the news and out in the world. So if that's your thing, definitely hit like, subscribe, do all the things. Now you're going to see me looking at notes because I'm going to say this every single time. I am a perimenopausal auntie. I do not remember what I was going to say, sometimes in the middle of saying it. So I'm going to be looking at the notes because, you want me to do that. And making sure that I've said all the things. Now, and I've talked about that this series is for Black women and non-Black or white women descended from enslaved Africans as the Black women, descended from enslavers and colonizers as white women. But aside from being women and femmes, because again, we're expansive and inclusive in these parts over here. So whatever of that gender expanse that you identify with, I'm talking about feminine energy, most likely in women, femmes, but I'm not even going to get into the language of it. You know who you are if you identify as you. But the other common thread across the board is that you kind of feel like you're stuck in not even just a rut, but a cycle, a pattern. You can look at things and actions and behaviors in your family, in your bloodline, from your own memory and say, this is something that is just It's just been running through our family. But the thing is, we don't have to just accept that as just what it is. Oh, that's just how our family is. There's a reason for it. And if that somehow that the family just is detrimental to yourself or to others, it is something that has to change. That's what these times are here to tell us. Yes, 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 yes. So you know who I am. All right, so let's do a quick recap. So this is day 4. We on the first day, we started out talking about healing the karma of stolen labor and repairing entitlement. From a karmic perspective, from a numerology perspective, that is the 13-4. So if there's a number that shows up in your astrology chart and your numerology that ends with a 13 and gets reduced to a 4, that means that there's a karmic debt around that soul's relationship with labor. And I'm saying it in that way because the relationship with labor can go in either direction. Because again, we're talking about Black women descended from enslaved Africans, white women descended from colonizers and enslavers. That disconnect around labor is for around Black women having been forced into labor and had labor stolen from them, being forced and brutalized for that purpose, to be extracted for the purposes of labor. And for white women, the entitlement that came along with the white supremacy. Even though they were oppressed as women, they benefited from white supremacy, and there was an entitlement and a lack of labor and a exploitation of other people's labor that was a part of that. So you can see very easily if we think about 13-4, and in my framework, I call it the sacred builder, because the pain, the trauma, the difficult times, they're all teaching mechanisms so that your soul can learn this lesson and figure out how to balance it in this lifetime, which means you become the sacred builder. If you had a broken relationship with labor and work on either side of the equation, either being taken for labor or taking advantage of someone else's labor, that's a wound that has to be addressed in your own soul so that you can walk that path of the sacred builder. So that's what we talked about the first night. The second night, we talked about turning ancestral trauma into sovereign joy. So again, using numerology as the baseline for that, that's a 14-5. So a number that comes down in your chart that's at 14, it gets reduced to 5. That is around freedom. That's about desire. That's about joy. That's about true liberation and the things that make life worth living, that make life sweet. So again, if you think about that being on a continuum or a spectrum, descendants of enslaved Africans, joy of the opportunity for their own joy was stolen, was taken, was suppressed, was beaten out of us. There was no freedom. We found joy because as a resilient people, and for many other reasons, we are going to find pockets of joy, very connected to our spirituality, very connected to who we are as a people. We're going to find it. But as a whole, joy was not something that was um, freely or easily at all given to us, but it was something that we had to find pockets of. So there was a disconnect in this freedom, this joy, this luxury of just being able to enjoy life, to enjoy desire, to enjoy sensuality. That was something that was taken from us. But for white women, the exploitation of others for their own enjoyment, for their own joy. And again, take a deep breath. Well, I didn't say that in this series yet, but take a deep breath, because even though as a white woman, if you're listening to this, maybe you've had hard times, maybe you've had difficulty, maybe you've actually felt the weight of the oppression, decenter yourself in that understanding that this is talking about white women as a whole. This is talking about the totality of the history between these groups, these lineages in this country and globally, because the transatlantic slave trade went to many different places. So when we think about that, um, the relationship with joy with Black women and the relationship with joy and access to joy has been imbalanced for both of those groups, but between them, if that makes sense. And then the third night, last night, we talked about the sacred redeemer. So that second night around joy, liberation, that's the sacred liberator. Because when you think about that first, and they're almost like gates, every soul has to master some parts of these. It's just in which lifetime are you mastering what? So, sacred builder, to be a human, to be a spiritual person, a spiritual being in a human body, you have a physical body so that you could do things, so that you could build civilizations, you can build homes, you can experience five senses that as just a free floating spirit, you wouldn't be able to do. So, being able to build and function on the physical plane, sacred builder is what's needed first. Next, you have to have joy. You have to have, um, you have to procreate. So there has to be some desire, even though desire is not just about procreation. Do not quote that out of my mouth, but we need joy to live. There's a story from the Ifa tradition out of Yorubas, West Africa, that talks about Oshun, who is the energetic and goddess or deity of sensuality, joy, dance, song, the sweetness of life. And that story goes that when God or Olodumare sent all of the Orisha here, not all, but sent Orisha here to build the earth, to make it inhabitable, to make it good. They went to work and they left Oshun out of it. So it was a bunch of masculine energies trying to build and nothing was working. Things were just falling, breaking. Nothing was sustaining. And it wasn't until they went back to God, Olodumare, and Olodumare's like, where's Oshun? Where is the feminine principle that is required to make anything good, to make anything work? That is what has been missing on this planet, and that's part of what that sacred liberator brings to the party. So then last night we talked about the sacred redeemer. This is one of the more complex karmic archetypes, paths, purposes, because it has a lot to do with betrayal and mistrust. And that karmic debt, that wound is one that impacts, I mean, they all impact us all in some way, but 16-7, which is the numeric number for it in numerology, 16 reduces down to 7. That is the karmic wound inherent in the transatlantic slave trade. What happened to us as a people was a deeply embedded violation, betrayal. And let me take out the word was because it's still happening. That was the most significant betrayal of one group of humanity against another group of humanity that is still playing out. That karmic wound has to be resolved for all of us. We also can have that any of these karmic wounds in our own specific family lines or in our own specific soul's journey if we being, the soul that is eternal, that just kind of comes into different lifetimes, has done something that created an imbalance in the past, you're gonna have to write that at some point. That just is what it is. But that also applies to the family lineage and that applies to humanity as a whole. So we got work to do. And 16-7 is a huge part of that. The sacred redeemer is a huge part of that because humanity needs to redeem. And I don't even want to use the word repent because this is not about Christian principles at all. It's about balance. That's all I can say. It's about balance. So the betrayal of being cheated on in a personal way, or the betrayal of another human being brutalizing you, torturing you, castrating, maiming, raping, like all of these horrible torture devices. That was a deep betrayal. And epigenetics, which is the scientific study of how trauma affects the expression of our DNA and our genes and gets passed down, that trauma and that experience and that betrayal still lives within all of us. It lives within Black people and Black women and has us to ever stay vigilant, ever stay distrusting of people, situations, and things. But every Black person will tell you if we driving down the street and pass a cop, first thing you do is look in your rearview mirror to see if you're getting followed. That's a hypervigilance that white people have no clue about unless they've been through some things. And the same thing on the, not the same thing, but conversely, with white women, there's a debt and a shame, even if it's unacknowledged, even if you're not aware of what it is, but internally your body knows. All of these memories, all of this that we have been through as a people, as a humanity, it lives in our cells. The cells, the body remembers, the body keeps the score, right? So as much as we try to avoid it, ignore it, and act like it's not there, it is still there. And it's a debt, a wound that has to be resolved. But this one can be complex because the sacred redeemer, when it's at full operation, when it's operating, I won't even say full, when it's there, it's going to create tower moments. It's going to destroy whatever was built if it was built on something that wasn't fully truth. And not a person's truth, but truth, actual reality, spiritual truth. And only spirit can determine what that is. So when something crumbles, you just gotta look at that and be like, all right, what happened? What was I not seeing? What do I need to do different? As I rebuild, how do I need to build in a way that's sustainable, that is actually for the good, that is actually beneficial for myself, my family, my community, for humanity? Because all of this is always going to be for the benefit of humanity and the individual. Because when things are in alignment, that's how it works. Things flow. It's not just one group taking all of the benefit at the expense of another group. That is not spiritual. That is, I'm not even going to say what that is, but it ain't that. So that's what we've been talking about. And then tonight we're talking about the sacred leader. This is the fourth and final karmic archetype, and it's based on the numerology of a 19-1, and it's about abuse of power. I mean, all of these to some extent is about abuse of power, but it's about which type of power. When we're talking about the sacred leader and that path, it's about a person, a being, a group, a lineage, a family that has been in a, well, we'll say a broken, imbalanced relationship with the concept of power and leadership. So think about that from a Black women or Black people perspective. It's been a broken relationship with leadership because anyone in our community who was a leader, who stands up and speaks out for us, who forges a new path, because we're talking about the at the base of it, the number is one, which is a leader, but a leader that's doing new things, a leader that is a pioneer. But when it's karmic, there's been a broken relationship with that concept of leadership and pioneer. And for Black people, anytime we've had a leader that was trying to make change, that was trying to move things forward, they were unalived. They were harmed. They were brutalized. They were kidnapped. They were thrown in detention centers. Like things happened that made it unsafe. And then for Black women as well, it has been unsupported leadership, being expected to carry the burdens, to do the things, to take care of everyone else, but no one's taking care of Black women. Malcolm X said it, a Black woman is the most disrespected person on the planet, the most unprotected person on the planet, and it is still true today. Now, on the other side of that, we already know when you were talking about colonizers and enslavers have been in these positions of authority, positions of power, not because they were placed there, but because they robbed, stole, maimed, conquered, deceived, and did all of the things to be in that position of quote unquote power. And I say that because, what humans call power is not divine power, it's not true power. It is actually the opposite of that. And so this imbalance and abuse of power, abuse of leadership on that side of the equation with colonizers and enslavers and their descendants is a fracture with this of the soul's relationship with leadership, with pioneering, um, with being in this position to help others and then violating that. So when we talk about this tonight, we'll get into it. And let me just make sure I've told you all the things I wanted to say. Um, It's about letting go of control and individuality. But when healed, this is about being a soul-led generational pioneer. Because think about where we at right now in time. We ain't even got a whole year under this current administration, and I think we can all look and tell we all are going to have to lead at the micro community levels and then blossom on up from there. But everybody is going to be responsible for leading. Everybody's going to be responsible for creating a world that our children, grandchildren, great grandchildren, 7 generations into the future can actually thrive and have a life and not create some Mad Max Beyond the Thunderdome type situation. Am I telling my age? I already said I was perimenopausal, so it is what it is. So, as you can tell, I teach from truth. as a sacred redeemer myself, as my main path, I have to speak the truth, even when it's a truth that's difficult to hear or difficult to say. And I've had to learn that through lots and lots of ups and downs. There's more videos on this YouTube channel where I talk about my story. I talk about it in my books. And, I'll come back and talk about it some more. But I don't want to spend too much time tonight telling you my backstory because it's a long one, honey. You'll be like, what the what? But tonight we're going to go into this sacred leader. And then tomorrow is our final night. We're going to do a great unbinding ritual. So we'll chit chat a little bit. And then I'm going to go off camera and I'm going to have us all walk through some visualization, some meditation to potentially do some writing to see and understand better about who we are, which of these archetypes do we feel into, and how we want to release the karmic wound, but keep the wisdom so that we can move forward. Tomorrow, the 27th, if you're watching this live, is the final September power portal where we're in a 9 universal year. September is a 9 universal month. And the 27th is the final 9 universal day. So we have that triple nine portal. But also, it is the day when your own personal year is tripled as well. So if you're in a personal year 3, the month is also a 3 for you, and the day will also be a 3 for you. So it's both collective and individual. That's the beauty of the universe. That's the beauty of spirit. All things are done to benefit both the individual and collective. There is no difference. There is not going to be something that's good for the collective that's harming the individual, unless the individual is orange. I'm just saying. Now we're going to move on. And so you know why this matters now. So let's set an intention for tonight. I mean, both the portal and the things that were happening, rights being rolled back, people being harmed, lies being told. We have to create the world that we want to see and not assume somebody else is going to do it, not wait for someone else to do it. So that's why right now it's important for us to fully stand, know, recognize, remember, learn who we are so we can stand in that and show up at the table to give what we came here to give to create the world that we want to see for our children, great grandchildren, somebody else's great grandchildren if you don't have kids, whatever it is. Yes, yes. All right. So tonight our intention is breaking cycles of overfunctioning, emotional suppression, or controlling behaviors masked as service, which is perfect timing for me to say, let's take a deep breath. I want you to inhale through your nose and exhale through your mouth. We're just going to do it one time this time. So when you do that, you want to inhale and fill your lungs. Let your body fill up like a balloon. Just fill yourself with air, with oxygen. And then when you are exhaling, release, let it all go. Let it all go and feel your shoulders drop, your jaw drop. Let go of tension. And that's important anytime we're talking about any of these karmic paths, because if there was karma, then there was trauma. And that trauma is held in your body. And when we start, and as we talk about these different aspects, your body will respond before your mind does. Your body will tense up. Your cells remember this. So taking deep breaths periodically and really knowing how to do that is important. Taking sips of cool water is important. I was looking for mine, make sure I got it. Um, Having your feet planted on the floor or the ground can help to ground you if you can. Stand up sometimes if you need to. Color, draw, and doodle while you're listening if you need to. The point is, take care of yourself. No one needs to be traumatized even further in order to heal. That ain't how that works. You got to do hard work, and you have to be brave, and you have to be courageous, and you have to be devoted to your own growth. But it's not about harming yourself because you feel like you got to pay the dues. That's not what we're talking about. Okay? Anything else? Yes, that was it. All right. So we're talking about 5 things tonight as a part of the sacred leader, and I'm just going to kind of roll through and talk about them. And let me know in the comments if you have any questions, if something doesn't make sense, or if something resonates with you and you feel it in your pit, because we can pause and unpack it a little bit, because I want you to leave here well. It's a Friday night. You can't be stressed out coming up out of here. So, the first thing we're going to talk about is why descendants of enslaved Africans often fear being too visible, and descendants of colonizers must dismantle inherited false supremacy. Okay, so with descendants of enslaved Africans, it's really, I mean, maybe it's not obvious to everyone. And I talk about this in my first book. The first book I wrote is called From Fat, Black, and Unlovable to Beautiful, Powerful Love. And that is, I'm hoping my connection is all good here. It's seeming choppy on my side, but hopefully it's all good. I'm going to keep going. Um, Being visible meant being in danger. If a white person noticed you, that could mean you would not make it home that night. And I'm talking about even after slavery was abolished and we were supposedly free. It was not safe to be noticed, to be seen. It was much better to just kind of not grab the attention of anyone. Emmett Till, a young, I believe he was 13, Emmett Till, he didn't actually do anything, but the white woman lied on him and said he did, and they came and took that child out of his grandparents' home and did horrible things to him, and they found his body a couple of days later. If you are unaware of this history, just search Emmett Till. It took decades upon decades to acknowledge and to get any type of justice, but that the white woman that lied on him got to live out to her old age, or at least to some extent. But the point is, being visible, being noticed is not something that was safe for us. Um, that was a part of how we grew up, meaning being taught to stand out. If you're going to stand out, it's because you knew something, but not, you don't want to be visible. You don't want someone to be able to notice you. And as black women, you damn sure didn't want to be visible to white men or even to the white women. And we're talking about on the plantations. If the slave owner or any of the overseers, any of the white men took notice of you, I feel that in my body even saying that. So I'm gonna take a drink of water. And if a white woman noticed you, or a white woman noticed her husband noticing you, it was a wrap for you. And the same thing for black men. Sexual abuse happened to black men as well, enslaved on those plantations. So just being seen and noticed, being visible was not safe for us. And it isn't even safe now. Think about what's happening in the world. It is not safe for black women to be visible, to be noticed, to be seen. And we know that and we feel that in our bodies. And yet it limits us from doing the work that we're here to do, from being fully who we are here to be and experience all the joys that we are here to experience. But that's why that the feeling of too visible is just automatically there and so easily there. Now, descendants of colonizers must dismantle inherited supremacy. Hold on just a second. All right, making sure that this Wi-Fi is working right. Just one sec. So I'm gonna just keep it real. My son is watching TV and playing a video game, and I'm streaming this. I'm like, all of that can't go on at the same time. Yes, I'm here visiting my son. All right, now let's keep it moving. So this descendants of colonizers got to have to dismantle this inherited false white supremacy. And these systems rewarded domination. These systems rewarded dehumanizing others and rewarded being at the center, which is why oftentimes, and I have to phrase these things in a particular way. So when I say that women as a whole have been oppressed, I have to very clearly say it does not in any way compare to the oppression and the enslavement and the brutality that Black women and Black people as a whole have experienced on this planet and in this particular country or any of the countries where the transatlantic slave trade went to. I have to say that very clearly because for many, many white women, that automatic go to of centering yourself, as soon as you hear, oh, well, women were oppressed. Yes, I was oppressed too. You cannot center yourself in that conversation. It is a fight you will not win. I'm just acknowledging that that is a true statement. Women as a whole have been oppressed, but it's not so that you center yourself. So that is something that has to get healed. And it dates to patriarchy, it dates to um, white supremacy and upholding the patriarchal system, which ultimately is really white supremacy and a patriarchal system are one and the same. White women benefited from the same system that oppressed them. So that's the complexity that you have to hold and you got to work through. I say it every time, put on the big girl panties because it ain't easy. And the delicacy that you have been groomed to have no longer applies. And we're talking about the divine feminine standing up and fighting for humanity. You got to do it. You have to look at the difficulty of that and deal with it. So dismantling that reflex of centering yourself all the time has to go. I mean, we see it. They're capturing all these Karens all over the place and putting them on social media, and they look absolutely ridiculous, but they themselves don't think that they do. Because it is a dysfunction that has been bred, that has been passed down, that has been taught, that has been kind of carried epigenetically to center themselves always. That has to end. And so for Black women, we have to change that messaging about don't draw attention as a survival strategy. That has to go. We have to be able to have a calm enough nervous system and feel safe enough to release that. Now, the unfortunate reality is that we ain't safe. But somehow within that, we have to get our bodies to feel safe so that we can move and do what we're here to do. And white women have to release this thought, this idea, this feeling that their fragility has to be safeguarded. You are descended from enslavers. You have a great, great, great grandfather somewhere who owned people, who probably did horrible things to people. You might have some ancestors who were abolitionists who helped uh, escaping enslaved Africans find their way to freedom, but you cannot only focus on that and ignore the other ones because, as I always say, we all need to do ancestral work and you need to know who you're working with and who you are undoing the work, the harm that they did. And you have to be able to face it. You can't undo it until you face it. Nothing in life can be healed, solved, and resolved unless you are willing to face what it is. So that's what I'm saying here today. And true healing is going to require that releasing that fear of persecution for Black women, and for white women, releasing the or surrendering and releasing that reflex to dominate spaces. There's been times when I've been in African-centered dance classes, and if the white women wasn't all at the front and all asking, just really dominating the space when it wasn't even their culture to begin with, they're like an invited guest to learn this thing that is uniquely ours. But if they've been in spaces and then when there's a discussion, I remember this particular discussion, the white woman tears begin. And maybe it's sincere tears because they are accustomed to being centered, and when they're not, it doesn't feel good, so they cry. but more likely they understand it as a tool and a weapon that, again, is probably potentially just a reflex that they're not even doing consciously, but has nothing to do with actually feeling emotions of sadness and wanting to shed a tear, but using it to get control and to recenter themselves in the situation by shedding a tear. If you're gonna shed some tears, shed it so that the ice race will stop. Shed it so that you can save some families. Shed it so that you put those white woman tears on the front line so that these white men can leave the people of color alone and people can live. Use it strategically. That's part of some of the thing we talked about earlier in this week. Okay. All right. So let's move on to number two, which was, and you'll see these questions, these topics I had listed in the description for this live. What reparative leadership looks like when you use influence to repair harm instead of repeat it. Well, we talked a little bit about that. Understand that we don't need a savior. We don't need anybody to come in and tell us what we need to do, how we need to do it differently, or how to heal our communities, because it is an insight you do not have. You don't have it within your body or in your lived experience. Now, if you have access, if you have tools, I just talked about using the white woman tears to help protect communities of color. That's a unique tool and skill set and influence that y'all have. Use it for our benefit. Use it to help others. Use it to open the doors. And normalize sharing the credit and being transparent with decision making. And here's the thing, because I've been in corporate spaces. If you look at me on LinkedIn, you'll see the corporations I've been to, at, and worked for. It's been an interesting journey. And in every last one of them, I've been through leadership training. I'll also have my master's in business administration. Lots of leadership training. Again, formal education, on the job training, mentoring, all the things. The model of leadership that we have been taught in the business world and beyond is a patriarchal white male centered model that is not inclusive, it's not participatory, it is not one that actually humanizes people at all. So when I've seen and actually worked for, in some cases, and interacted with white women who are, in their minds, embodying leadership, what they're embodying is patriarchy. And I say white women loosely because it goes beyond white women descended from enslaved Africans. I mean, descended from enslavers, white women descended from enslavers. It's beyond, which is why I also say non-black women, because they could be from any Asian country, they could be um, from any European country that never actually uh, enslaved anyone. You could be a new immigrant to this country, but you've learned how to interact with and how to look at and how to be a leader from patriarchal systems, which means your leadership skills are flawed. How you look at leading is flawed, and it will not be sustainable as we move forward past this transition time period that we're in. So it's time. I'll give another example. I was out. This is probably about a year or so, maybe a little bit more than that, with some friends, and one of the friends, we were at an outdoor, at a restaurant, but it was an outdoor spot, and didn't know that couldn't have children there. So one of the women that was with us had her baby with us. She had a baby. And the manager, who was a woman, comes out and she says, "Oh, you cannot be here. We would lose our license." And she's just going all off and would not serve anything and just was yelling at the woman and stood there until she got up and walked away and, like, went outside of, still, like, within watching distance of us, but went outside the little gate. I had to have a conversation with her because I said, "I understand that you are a manager, but that is not how women lead." That was a woman with children. There was so much more compassion you could have had with that whole situation, because it wasn't like the woman wasn't going to move, but the way you tried to humiliate her because she had a child with her, that is not how women lead and how women take care of each other. We had to have a conversation. I need you to do better. So that's just an example of looking at leadership in a different way. It's not about centering you or repeating what you have learned, whether it's from a father uncle or just in the world as someone has supposedly taught you how to be a leader. That ain't it. And we have to publicly, white women, non-black women who actually want to grow and change, because if you're not, I'm not even talking to you. But if you want to grow and step into your role as a sacred leader, nothing to do with religion, you need to publicly name and address the harm that's being done, that others do, even if it's uncomfortable for you. Use the privilege that you have to both dismantle the thing, to quicken the dismantling of the thing, as well as to open doors for those who are trying to rise and get comfortable with their leadership, like many black women are, as well as black men, but we're talking to women on these channels. So that's important, and that's part of the what reparative leadership looks like. It's not about centering yourself, but it's about using your access to open doors, and for women to realize and normalize that you can be seen and not be harmed, that you can lead and your leadership is valuable. So the next one, the third one we're going to talk about is how to build trust and shared power across racial and ancestral lines. Well, this series is an example of that, in my opinion. Real talk, straight up real talk. I say things, and I think this is a model, and this is my opinion, a model that we have to be able to replicate in our own ways of saying the truth. I'm not gonna not use the word racism. I'm not gonna not use the word enslaver. I'm not gonna not use the word colonizer because it makes white people feel uncomfortable. You need to fucking feel uncomfortable because we've been uncomfortable for 500 years. And it's not a discomfort because it's a lie. It's a discomfort because it's the absolute truth of what has been and what is happening. We're in the continuum of the history, the timeline where people were not regarded as people, where my people were not regarded as people. We're in that same timeline. I can point to, if I look at my ancestral tree, I can point to a couple of clicks back who was enslaved. It's not that long ago. And so we need to be able to have those truthful, honest conversations and not sugarcoat it and not make it seem like, oh, but no, it's okay. And that, I'm not trying to win your approval. I want you to wake up and realize who you are and take accountability for what has been and move forward with it. No shame, just get her done. But that truth is what's going to help us to build trust. If you are have no idea, yeah, 2020 should have opened a lot of eyes. People were in book clubs and reading books and like, "Oh my God, I didn't know." Well, now you know. And now it's 2025. Did you move any further? Did you go beyond reading books or did you just go back into being comfortable again? Black people, I ain't gonna trust you if you still holding on to your privilege of whiteness and don't want to let it go, but you want to say, yeah, go, let's do the thing. But let me still stay in this comfortable position with all the benefits that I have and not really change anything that I would actually lose out on. We want to build trust. For white people, you got to be willing to give up some of your comfort that was stolen and built on the backs of the enslaved Africans in this country. That is a reality you're going to have to face and a conversation you're going to have with your family, with Mima and them. I'm just saying. And in general, what's going to help us is to practice deep listening. I listen. I listen. I listen to myself. I listen to Black women. I listen to white women. I listen to Asian women. If they on some bullshit, I stop listening to them because I'm going to protect myself first because I don't want to take in the harm that some people are spouting. But I hear and feel and can understand the complexities of being a human. And that is, I think, one of the beautiful outcomes that we will eventually see as women heal of different lineages, different cultures, heal and stand in their power, their ancestral mothers' power. then we're able to have these conversations and be able to connect with each other in ways that will allow us to move change forward. I think that's a huge benefit. And so that we can commit to long-term change. We commit to long-term relationships and shared responsibilities and shared leadership. I think that's a vision that we can get to, but for right now, Black women have to heal within ourselves, and white women have to heal within themselves. And bit by bit, we can have those conversations. We can build trust amongst each other. But I'm gonna tell you right now, as a Black woman, I'm not gonna trust any white women until you prove and show to me that one, you're getting your people under control and where you actually stand publicly, loudly, and unapologetically. If you're trying to ride the fence, nope, nope. And if you're a white woman listening to this and watching this, whether live or in the replay, put in the comments, what will it take for you to trust? Or is there even an issue of trust? What I've heard in the conversations that I've had is more of an issue of shame, not wanting to face that dark reality that's, again, not that many generations back. I think the burden of gaining trust, of earning trust, is on white women, white people in general, but again, we're talking about women tonight. And how we need to move and what we need to do and how we need to move forward. These are kind of concepts that I'm talking about as a whole in terms of the karmic path of coming here to resolve issues around leadership, to resolve wounds around leadership, around being a pioneering one, whether it's from being oppressed and being um, punished. I'm trying not to use words that would, get a flag, but it is what it is. What happened to us is a true thing. Leaders getting slain, leaders getting taken out, leaders getting assassinated, leaders getting ostracized, Black women leaders getting targeted versus white leaders and white women actually coming into that leadership through stolen means and feeling the need to center themselves even as they lead. Leadership is a service role. It's not a ego-driven role for either party, but we see it play out in white spaces, and we see it play out in Black spaces when the Black leaders are emulating what they've seen in white spaces. True leadership from indigenous people looks very, very different. It's much more communal, and it's much more it's not capitalism driven. So when we think about all these different ways that you can step into your sacred leadership, it's really about, who are you? What's your soul's assignment? What what are all of the different karmic archetypes that you carry in different ways, and in where in your numerology, where in your astrology, what where do you feel it in your body? All these different things are things that we break down in my course, Your Soul Knows the Assignment, because we need to know who we are without the society expectations, without the cloaks and covers that we have been given from other people, without the patriarchal definitions that really have nothing to do with what it means to be a woman. But they will try to tell you what it means to be a woman, or a femme, or whatever the case may be. But in this course, we actually dive into who you are actually here to be and what you are actually here to do. And we have conversation around that, and I give you tools around that, and we kind of get into the details of how you can fulfill your mission here on this planet. Because we need everybody on deck doing what they came here to do, healed and authentic. It's not about getting the bag, although the bag will come. If you're doing what you need to do for humanity, the bag will be a part of that mission. And so, how I'm going to do it, or I am doing it. You sign up for a vibe check call. The link is in the description, is pinned in. I have my calendar open to receive, to book those calls starting next week. So that, and the calendar will only be open until we end the live the live stream tomorrow. So Saturday, when the 999 portal closes, my calendar is going to close. So if you're going to sign up, if you want to learn more about the program, and we'll have a conversation in that vibe check call to see if it's something for you, if my style is your style, and if we can actually work together. And then the other thing we're going to talk about is this is the first time I'm opening up to white women as well. And so if there's enough white women that are interested, we'll have two different groups because there is the trust is not there yet. Black women need their own space and white women need their own space so that we can have the conversation. And I'm going to say, let me be clear. Black women need their own space because we have very few of them and we need to have some internal conversations and do some deep healing. Most spaces that exist are pretty much white spaces. But because of what we're talking about, it does need to be a closed container because we need to really strip away all of the illusions, all of the false superiority to get to the humanity underneath the patriarchy that has been programmed into many white women. Black women as well, but it's a whole different situation when we're talking about white women or those descended from enslaved Africans, those who's descended from enslavers. I just keep going there with it. I mean, the reality is too, I was watching this other post from a seemingly white young man, but he was showing a picture of his grandmother who passed for white. And I'm looking at the picture and I'm like, how did they think this woman was white? She just looked like a light-skinned black woman. I'm talking about lips, like she just looked like a light-skinned black woman. But the reality is a lot of, and I know people in my own lineage who walked away from Mississippi passing for white and just kept passing, never heard from again. So they were out there living their lives as white people because it was a male and a female. And there's some white people out here who don't even know that they black. So maybe that's why I keep accidentally saying descended from enslaved Africans because some of y'all are too. Just saying. So anyway, schedule your vibe check call so we can talk to see if this is a thing for you. Now, going on to the fourth point is this idea around perfectionism. And it's really a fear of persecution or collapse. We want to be so perfect. We want to do everything just so no one can criticize us. Nobody can come for us. If I'm gonna be visible, let it be visible because I did something so right that I cannot be punished for small mistakes. I won't have to be a 9-year-old child. In my ancestral, I think it might have been, I'm blanking on her name, but a woman who could pass for white, but she was black, born into slavery, and she got moved around to different homes in the North. She wasn't in the South. She got moved to different homes in the North. And one of the homes she got moved from because they beat her and they sold her after they beat her at 9 years old because she made some simple mistake like didn't polish the silver in the way that they wanted to. Something really mundane, but they beat this child and then sold her off. She had already been sold away from her mother long before that. But this perfectionism, so imagine that as just one example of any small unintentional anything done wrong as an enslaved African, as a black person living during Jim Crow, as a black person now, you do any kind of small mistake, it's a indictment across our whole culture. I'm hesitating to say race because again, it's a construct. So this idea of perfectionism seems like a way of safety, but it's not. It absolutely is not. And then, so you don't want to get persecuted. And for white women, perfectionism can hide a fear of being called out. Like I know, and I've had conversations with a lot of white women who feel like I can't even attempt to do this because I'm going to make a mistake and then I'm going to get called out for my mistake. And I can't handle making a mistake and getting called out for it. I'll collapse and then I'll be crying and then I should just not. So don't even try. So that's why courage and being brave and letting go of the white woman tears is going to have to be a key part of decentering yourself. You are going to make mistakes, but be open and willing to learn and keep going at it again because you are undoing 500 years of bullshit. Actually, more because They were brutalizing, by they, I'm talking about the European men, the slave traffickers who came to the continent of Africa to kidnap people and sell them across the globe. They were brutalizing their own people in their own countries, territories, and wherever they were, Portugal. They were brutalizing their own people before they came and brutalized us. So there's a lot to unpack with that and dismantle that privilege. There's a lot of fear involved across the board, and rightfully so. This has not been peaceful work. This has not been a peaceful um, dichotomy to work through. The issue of race, oppression, colonization, all of this. It's been brutal for really thousands of years, but we have to be brave. Big girl panties, be brave. And then the final point I want to talk through is why true leadership invites accountability and not applause. Yes, we all want to be encouraged when we do something correctly, when we do something good. We want to, I mean, receiving accolades feels good, but the path of the sacred leader, balancing that scale, balancing that soul's relationship with leadership is not about applause. It's the opposite of that. It's about service. It's about taking accountability and doing the work and leading in partnership with others. It is not being recognized. It is not ego driven. It's not about applause. It's not getting propped up and put on a pedestal. It's not about all of the foolishness that we see happening with people who want to call themselves leaders, but what they're doing is bullying everyone else to be so afraid that they feel untouchable. We already see that that's not sustainable or possible. A true leader should be beloved. A true leader should want to ensure that everyone that they are leading is good, is doing well, that there's compassion involved in that, that their humanity is preserved. Now, applause can be addictive. Getting those accolades can be addictive. And anytime we're talking about these karmic archetypes, whether it's the sacred builder, sacred liberator, sacred redeemer, or sacred leader, to actually walk the path with the wisdom and not continuing to reactivate the wound in yourself and others, not continuing to injure yourself and others by reenacting the karmic debt you came here to solve, to actually walk the path of the sacred healer that you are, it's not easy. Your tendency will want to go into what was done before, what was easiest. Some of your muscle memory will go that way, but you have to not. That's where the strength comes in. That's where the understanding that leadership is service comes in, and where accountability comes in, and where your impact is far greater and more important than your own personal recognition. Talking to white women with that. For black women, Stephanie Perry was live. Was that yesterday? I don't know. The days are blending in, but she said, "Humility ain't for black women. We've been suppressed and oppressed and dehumanized for so long. We need to pop our collars." Now she didn't say that, but I mean that's essentially what she was saying. We need to know who we are and be willing to talk about it and not play this humble role, like, "Oh my God, I'm just me, I'm just meek." That's why we have to throw off these chains of patriarchy, which tells women that that's what's being feminine. No. So maybe black women centering themselves a little bit more, but not for the purpose of selfish or ego, which unless there's some other wounding there, we wouldn't tend to do anyway. And for white women, it's centering yourself less. How can you serve? How can you help? But also still standing in your power. It's a balance to get in that, to do that. The other thing I want to mention about this path of the sacred leader and the whole idea of this karmic debt, this karmic wound around um, leadership, and power. That 19-1 can show up in many different areas in, again, your numerology, but there's also a aspects of it that show up in your astrology, in your Odu with Ifa, in different divination systems from all over indigenous cultures all over the world. But when it shows up in something in numerology called an essence cycle early in your life as an indication of the experience that you had, it can indicate that there was some type of child abuse, because if there's a karmic debt that shows up in the early years of your life as an essence cycle talking about your experience, you had no power. So someone abused their power, which you experienced the karma of that. They have their own, but you experience the karma of that. So when I bring that up because of this current administration, the Epstein files, and we know we're talking about a bunch of pedos. We know that's what we're talking about, who have normalized that. And just think about all of the sacred leader karma debt, soul wounding that they have created for themselves, but we care a little bit less about that because it's pedos. But they've created that soul wounding for so many others. So that's why all four of these karmic archetypes, these karmic paths, are so important, because it's happening to people in mass. 16-7, sacred redeemer, that's the slave trade. 19-1, the sex trade or sex trafficking. Because if you're a grown woman, you decided, you want to sell some things that you have attached to you, that's a part of your body, that's your business. Nobody's demonizing sex work for consenting adult people. There have been so many wounds that are not gonna just go away. We got to be willing to do the work individually and collectively. Then individually and collectively, it's a cycle and it's a spiral. You got to keep going. Accountability teaches future leaders that humility is strength, not weakness. What if somebody had taught the Orange Brigade accountability? What if somebody had decentered their own self importance? These people would be very different people. Raise your children. So when I look at all of this, it's about understanding your path, understanding your lineage, your ancestry, taking accountability for that. And accountability applies to both sides. I know my people were wounded. I know they were harmed. I'm not ashamed of the fact that my people were enslaved, because I know being enslaved meant that they built all of this. They survived something that most human beings on this planet could not survive. We still here. So I have no shame in the fact that I am descended from enslaved Africans, because who the hell else can say that? But also descended from so many other cultures that ended up getting mixed within me. And the same is true for other descendants of enslaved Africans. Knowing who we are and the fullness of that, even acknowledging, even though we may not want to, all the different cultures that are within us, all the different bloodlines that are within us. And then, as white or non-Black women, recognizing and understanding the role your people had to play in what's happening on the planet right now. What's happening in Rwanda, what's happening in the Sudan, what's happening in the Congo, what's happening in Gaza. White male patriarchy is one and the same. White supremacy and capitalism, all of those things combined is what we're seeing play out now. That has to be healed. That has to be reversed. That has to be dismantled, not reversed, dismantled, so that we can actually build what's right, what's good for all of us. Oh, y'all. Yep, it's that time. Take a deep breath. This time we're going to do 3. Again, as we inhale through your nose, let your body expand, let your your chest, your stomach, everything expand, just fill with air. And as you exhale through your mouth, make a sound, sigh, just let it come out, let it flow out. Because you're releasing the pain, the trauma, the tightness within your body. Because again, all of this lives in your body. We can have a whole other conversation. Every karmic path that I've walked has shown up in my health, has shown up. I have a video here on YouTube where I'm talking about the 7 surgeries that I've had so far, and you I got at least 2 to 3 more before I'm out of here. But the point is, take care of your body. I just went off on a tangent. Take care of your body and inhale, exhale, release the tension, release the trauma, release so that you can see and think and feel clearly moving forward. But we're going to take 3 deep breaths together. Yes, yes, let's do it. Gonna inhale through your nose and 2 and 3. And with this last exhale, make sure you make some sound. Let it out. It's Friday too. Let it out. Inhale through the nose. Mm. Sometimes a deep breath just feels so good. So I want to just check in. Anybody have any questions? If you're watching the replay, feel free to put questions in the comments. I'll come back periodically and check for them and answer. Think we all good? Okay. I want y'all to just take some time tonight and just a little bit more time and breathe. I have some meditation videos here on my YouTube channel. Pick any one of those. They're less than 20 minutes and just release the trauma from the week. Release the tension. And maybe there's tension from even hearing this conversation and having this conversation. Release it, release it, release it. Because you can't change anything if you're tight and wound up and in fear. Release. Do some meditation. And then join us back here tomorrow at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern. Child, I'm a digital nomad. Sometimes I'm like, what time zone am I in? I truly do not know. And then tomorrow, what we're going to do, and if you're joining live, if not, whenever you watch this, the 5th video, the 5th night, we will recap all of these, and then we're going to talk and have I use the word ritual lightly because ritual can be super complex or it can be super simple. I lean towards the simple, especially in a public scenario like this. So we're going to do a little ritual so that we can let your cells know that it's okay, that we're releasing, that we can receive the wisdom from the wounds, from the traumas, and apply that to walk our path with clarity and dignity. Yes, yes. So we'll be back here for tomorrow for that. And in the meantime, again, your soul knows the assignment. We're going to be, fall cohort is going to be starting soon, but get in your vibe check call to see if this is something for you, if this is something you want to get down with. You can learn more about it at the link it's pinned in the description. It's also in the, pinned in the comments and also in the description. And you can just learn more about my books and other offerings at shop.beautifulpowerfullove.com. Also linked in all the places. Because if the course isn't for you, maybe you just want to do some self study or ease into it. Whatever works. My mission, my purpose is to help individuals, Black women especially, white women if you're willing to do the work in the scenario, to release and to stand in the power of who they are because we need everybody on deck to deal with what we're dealing with in the world as humanity, as a global community. And we need to build something that looks a lot different than what patriarchy has had us living through the last several hundred slash thousand of years. It sounds like a long time, but it ain't that long. Yes, yes. All right, y'all. Well, thank you so much for being here with me tonight. I fought traffic to make sure I could get here on time. Ah. But I'm thankful for all of y'all. I'm thankful that you're here. I'm thankful that I'm here. I'm gonna keep it real because there was times that your girl might not have been here. So I'm thankful for all of that. And with that, we're gonna wrap up the live stream for tonight. And as always, until I see y'all tomorrow, and as always, whether I see you tomorrow or not, but I hope I see you tomorrow. Take good care of you, because who else gonna do it? We'd like other people to, but they don't know how to do it until you do it. So take good care of you. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Ashe. See you tomorrow. Have a good Friday night. Pop some bubbly. Peace.